Good day, my name is Kim Elton and this is the Ignition Report. Today my guest is Mr. Gordon Dowsley. He's the manager of the Energy Systems Group at Inproheat Industries. Welcome, Gordon. How are you?
Very good, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Now, you're a BC born and bred boy. Tell us about that, your
Sure.
background a little bit before we get started.
Yeah, I was born in Vancouver General Hospital
No kidding.
a few years back. Yeah, and then my dad was in the resource business, so we went over to Vancouver Island and were there for a number of years. And then he got transferred. We came back to Vancouver in 1972, and I've been here since.
All right, well, things are a little different back then, I would.
Oh, absolutely,
I would think.
that's for sure.
So BC born and bred, you then went to school at UBC,
Right.
Cap College, BCIT,
Yeah,
everything
right.
BC.
Yeah, everything BC.
Went to
yeah.
mechanical
yeah.
design
Yeah.
and worked for a number of companies, but finally wound up at Inproheat Industries, where
Yes.
you are now.
Yeah.
And you know a thing or two about the thermal energy business, I would think, and that's why
Sure,
you're here
yeah.
today.
Pretty much since I graduated from school, got into industry, a lot around combustion, high pressure pumping, valves, controls, automation, that sort of thing. So yeah, I have a good rounded background there.
Okay, good. Well, let's talk about the past, the present, and the future. We're going to talk a little bit to you about, because you're an expert in this area.
An expert, we want to be careful there.
Okay.
I have some knowledge of it.
Okay, right. Well, we'll vet that as well. But you have an opinion.
Yeah.
And vast experience in the area. So, we're going to define what the thermal energy industry means and what that's all about. But let's just put things in perspective.
Sure.
You've been around the business for some 20 years now and more.
Yeah.
And tell me what it was like when you first started in the industry compared to today.
Well, it was much simpler in that the technology isn't what it is today. So the combustion processes, some of the pumping processes in those areas weren't as sophisticated. So automation has played a large part, and in the combustion side, meeting stricter emission guidelines is very important. So we've seen the tightening up of emissions, lowering of emissions, and technology and efficiencies improve over that time.
Okay, so that means two things. A more efficient process means, greater profitability for the company and so on.
Right.
And now today it's so important that
Yeah.
we use resources responsibly.
And less manpower too. That's another thing we've noticed in these facilities, or standalone facilities, where you used to have a number of employees and departments. With automation and efficiency improvements in equipment, there are now less people manning the particular operations.
Is that a good thing?
Well, no, and it is and it isn't. But so you lose employment opportunities, but at the same time, they can now, with those efficiencies, plan ahead, budget, forecast for future facilities. So it'd be nice to have more people in the fields, but depending on whether you're government or a private industry, you have to answer to someone. It's particularly the private industries, so they have to answer to shareholders. So you have to maximize your efficiency in your plants, and that's what we see. Better equipment, better operations procedures, less employees.
Is there less human error?
No, probably in our side of the pumping, probably the biggest area of our repair is induced by operator error.
Okay.
Which is not good. And,
No.
and the issue there is, again, proper training. We're finding with the increased activity, especially in the West, Alberta and now Saskatchewan, they just don't have the in-house training that they once did. The apprentice program, that sort of thing.
Right, that has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, it has. And again, that's for these companies, there's an awful lot of financial pressure put on them.
To be more efficient.
Yeah, and reduce costs and satisfy the shareholders.
So the biggest change you've seen then is automation, changes in the industry that way.
Yeah.
Where do you see it going?
Automation.
More automation, more efficiency, more?
There'll always be improvements. It's like the cell phone, nothing. When there's money involved, nothing stays stationary in development and improvements. So.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, you operate mostly in British Columbia and also Alberta.
Yes.
Close proximity, right side by side, but BC is quite different than Alberta in terms of its use of energy and so on. A lot more water, hydro, and so on.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about the difference between thermal energy as opposed to other sources of energy.
Sure. Well, thermal energy, you use a heat source, whether it's very little here, though geothermal, whether it's combustion by any of the main fuels.
So diesel?
Diesel, propane, primarily natural gas, and in Alberta there's coal, which of course isn't favorite word now. So they're eliminating those and converting a lot of those plants to gas fire.
Okay.
Again, versus what we are blessed with in BC is hydroelectric.
Right.
We've got a lot of potential with water at higher elevations, so
Right.
we're able to generate a majority of our power by hydroelectric, which
So
depending on your
let's talk about Alberta.
yeah.
The oil sands, the tar sands, some called. The largest single industrial project that the world has ever seen, apparently, in my reading and background, and very political as well. People are very concerned.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
give us your kind of perspective on that, and where, your company and your business, explain a little bit of
Yeah.
that, because I think often we don't quite. People aren't quite as familiar with the whole process and what it means and why it's important.
Well, when you look at the world as a whole, there's a need for energy, and that energy has to come from somewhere. Whether it comes from the Middle East, whether it comes from South America, whether it comes from Asia, wherever they find these oil sources, the North Hibernian coast,
Okay.
So it's a definitely required commodity to make the world go revolve, right? I mean, we just can't have heating in our homes, we can't have electricity.
Do you ever see a time that we'll go beyond that?
Well, that's a crystal ball, but no, there definitely will be developments. There are people looking into different technologies that may come to the fore. But at this point in time, given the nature of industry using oil-based, there's just no way that's going to change in 1 or 2 generations. We're always going to have a need for oil.
So what's the solution then? Because we talked a little earlier about coal, and they're moving away from coal. The reason is because it's dirty fuel.
It has high emissions.
High emissions.
Yeah.
And we got to reduce that, of course. So, and oil and the extracting that resource has become quite political. So do you ever see a point in the future, like for instance, in British Columbia, and I don't know if this is germane or not, but LNG, is that a big deal? Is that going to change things?
It's very huge potential. It's very huge potential
Yes.
to benefit us, and that's when we talk about the oil sands and LNG as revenue streams. We need the revenue streams. We can't maintain our lifestyles and support the things we want to with healthcare, education, and all that without having available resources to tax. And if we close down the oil sands, we close down LNG, we close down all business opportunities because it's not welcome by some people. They have a bias against it. Then we're going to not be able to finance our future social needs.
There we go.
So oil and gas in Alberta, say the oil sands, there's a couple methods of extracting the bitumen. There's mining, where they just do open pit mining and they scrape and they pull it out, and that's not very, very pretty, and that's what typically gets shown on TV. If you go to in situ, where we're more involved with steam-assisted gravity drainage, the well pads are very small, the pathways are very small, so the disruption to the environment is very small.
Okay, let's get to that then, because this is the responsibility side to it.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing and what most industrials would say is that, look, we're not going to be stop using oil and even coal in the near future. So what's the responsibility side of it? You just talked about, if you could just say that again, steam. What was that? I'm sorry.
Steam of thermal versus hydroelectric.
Right.
Okay, thermal using steam for process or power production using a fuel.
Okay, and the comparison between open pit and these
And an
other
open pit
methods.
is, again, like if you've seen many mining operations where they simply go in and they take the overburden off to get it what they're after.
The overburden is the ground above.
Yeah, and then they get down to the bitumen and tar sands, and then they process that by truck.
Right.
So that's very heavy mechanically involved.
Right.
But at the end of that claim, what they have to do then is go back and do remedial work. So the pits and that they've cleaned up, they take all overburden, anything they've taken from the process, put it back on, and plant seeds and trees and do remediation on it.
Okay.
So in actual fact, in some cases, if you look at oil sands, the remediated soil ground cover is better than what was originally there.
Really?
Well, if you've got oil on the surface and streams and that, I mean, it's God's oil spill. So they're just going in and cleaning it up and doing something with that product.
The responsibility side of the efficiency and responsibility side of the claim. What about other energy sources? We hear a lot about solar, wind, and these so-called green resources.
Sure, and there is pressure put on the politicians to go green. And it's, although they've done it in Europe for quite some time, windmills, wind turbines for generation, solar but they all have their additional costs
Right.
and complexity. So there's definitely a trend to want to do that, but it comes at a cost. And unfortunately, the cost versus, say, in BC's case, a hydroelectric dam is significantly higher. And
Right.
rates would increase to the consumer if we were to go heavily into...
Well, do these things then become part of the mix?
part of
We're
the...
seeing these other...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. And again, it's like recycling and a bunch of other things. There's things in our society that are mandated because people want to be seen to be doing more. But you actually look at the cost of these operations; they're not viable, and they have to be funded by the government. So we have programs in our culture now, or in our cities, that we're spending more money than we would have to without them.
And
Battery
there's the other
recycling.
side of the equation as well. So
Oh, sure, yeah. But
Are you
so
willing to spend that money?
so that's the question. It's what do you want to spend to protect the environment, and are you really protecting the environment? Windmills have their problems. The turbines are silent, and if you're on a migratory bird path, they kill hundreds of birds.
the solar...
The birds, even bats can't tell the blades coming around. So
really?
yeah. And then the big solar arrays they're doing down in the States, in Phoenix and that, where they take a bunch of parabolic mirrors and concentrate them on a tank at the top. They vaporize water. Birds fly through there and get zapped or get fried by the rays, the sun reflecting up onto
I
the
never
top.
heard of that
Yeah,
before.
so it's the things you don't hear, and you look at the IPPs around BC. We've got a bunch of little Runner River power generation projects. They're pretty destructive. If you look at them, you need to have a power line in, and so they cut a big swath there and they
All right.
dam the river. And so
Well, so hopefully the more technology, more automation, more
yeah.
will improve things as well.
So really, where I was going with that is just there's a trade-off to everything. So we need oil. We have to deal with the emission problems and issues. Shouldn't say problems, issues in Alberta and Saskatchewan, northern BC. But that's what the government does. They mandate, and the people who go in there to process the bitumen have to meet these
Those
standards.
are pretty strict
The rules are
standards
pretty
and
strict.
getting more restrictive all the time.
It's not like the Eastern Europe where oil runs freely on the ground. No, that's just not allowed here. So we do have very high standards.
You work with a lot of companies in your work that bring to the table different technologies and systems and so on. What are they doing to, I'm just talking about the mechanical side of it, companies like Tranter, for example, and their heat exchangers. I'm sure there's a lot of technology that goes into those systems, and they've improved over the years as well.
Tranter's been good. They're very responsive. We had a demand for a style of heat exchanger in Alberta particularly, and they went out and acquired a company. So that was very forward thinking of them to do that, and has benefited us quite nicely. So, and in their own product lines, they're doing constant product development improvements in that. So, Schroeder and KSB, again, these are private companies. They're not public companies, so they have the ability to pour profits back into R&D, which keeps them at the fore in their particular product markets.
These are the companies that provide the pumps, the valves, the heat
Correct.
exchangers, and you guys put all these things together into systems.
We can. Our engineering department would incorporate our principal products into a system where our group, the Energy Systems Group equipment, we buy and resell. Principal equipment. We don't really package like.
And you've seen a lot of changes in that over the years, the advancement of these technologies?
Yes, and some in the automation side. The jewelry that goes on equipment is much more sophisticated, but the basic equipment, the pump, the heat exchanger, they can tweak them, but there's not much more efficiency than they would have back in the 60s, say.
Just in the way they're managed.
Well, just with the design, you can only do so much with a design, and so there's no next hurdle or leap that's going to give anyone a distinct advantage. But what it is, it's the quality that goes into the product.
Right.
Yeah. So
that you're efficient and well serviced.
Yeah. And the companies stand by them. Warranty consideration,
There you
quality assurance, all that kind of thing is very important.
Good. Well, this has been very informative. Thank you very much.
Good. I hope it didn't upset anybody. I do have a bias.
All right. Well, we're very bullish on efficiency, of course, for the company's responsibility and where this is all going.
Yeah.
So that's been the Ignition Report for today. Mr. Gordon Dowsley, thank you very much once again for being with us, and perhaps sometime in the future.
Absolutely, and thank you for this opportunity.
You bet.
Good.
And thank you.